keeping it.
All right, let's get started. We are running a little late today. Thank you so much to our presenters for being flexible. This is our workshop about the downtown investment strategy being presented by Joe Spencer. So let's do a quick round of introduction at the table here, and then I'll hand it off to Joe to introduce himself as well as the folks who are online. So Commissioner Mai Chong Zhang, Ramsey County Commissioner for District 6.
Raphael Ortega, District 5.
Nicole Fredham, District 1.
Mary Jo McGuire, District 2.
Rena Moran, I'm sorry, Ramsey County Commissioner, District 4.
Joanna Berg, County Manager.
Carrie Collins, Deputy County Manager, Economic Growth, Community Investment.
Josh Olson, Community Economic Development.
Mr. Martinson, Ramsey County Commissioner, District 3.
Victoria Reinhardt, Commissioner, District 7.
Great. Joe, kick us off.
We're the audience quick. Sorry.
Sorry.
Oh,
We're going-
just for time.
Oh,
for
for time, we're just gonna say
Yeah.
the title.
Yeah.
We know you all.
There are
Hi, everyone.
additional staff, for the folks who are online, there are additional staff in the background.
So I'm Joe Spencer. I'm with the St. Paul Downtown Alliance, and I'll introduce our online guests here in a second, but I just want to start by saying thank you for your time and for your commitment to downtown St. Paul. Obviously, we value all of you as leaders, but also downtown workers and an important part of our community, obviously, and with some of your major projects, one in particular, as you'll see, really turn out to be just a key priority for the future of downtown. James, would you just take a moment to introduce yourself, and then I'll jump into introducing the presentation?
Good morning. I'm James Lima. I'm president of James Lima Planning and Development. We're real estate economic policy advisors working around North America to create more competitive cities and to address quality of life opportunities, working with public, private, not-for-profits organizations. Pleasure to be here. I'm joined by my colleague, Olivia Dobbs.
Thank you so much.
Good morning. Yep.
Hey, Olivia, nice to see you again.
Likewise.
So for me, I think it's actually helpful to start this conversation with the very beginning of the St. Paul Downtown Alliance. The Alliance was launched in 2018, and I came on as the first staff person. And very often, the mission of the Alliance is to help drive more vitality into downtown St. Paul. And people will very often ask me, what does that mean, vitality? What's the vision for downtown? And pretty quickly, we really zeroed in on a definition of vitality. Simply means people, having lots of people around. There are lots of wonderful places across Ramsey County, across Minnesota, that are beautiful places, but you wouldn't describe as vibrant. I was in the Boundary Waters earlier this year. It's a beautiful place that nobody doesn't love, and yet nobody would describe it as being very vibrant or full of vitality. But our downtowns, we need them to be full of people and full of all kinds of people, workers, residents, and visitors. Quickly after we got started with the Downtown Alliance, we got very active in the, there we go, in the International Downtown Association. They put together this vitality index that compared downtowns to one another across the US and Canada. And what that study showed is that the most vibrant downtowns have 10 to 15% of their citywide population living in downtown. They've got 50 to 60% of their citywide jobs located in downtown. And when we compared that to St. Paul, well, we've had over the last 10 years or so a lot of residential growth. It grew from 5,000 residents to 10,000 residents. And obviously, in order to get to even just 10%, we put out this goal of adding 20,000 residents, tripling the population. That's pretty bold and aggressive growth. We also wanted to grow from 55,000 jobs in downtown to 75,000 jobs. I'm sorry, 75,000 jobs in downtown to be 50% of the citywide job count. And then build on an existing strength. We do have a number of wonderful visitor destinations between our arts community and some of the entertainment options we have in downtown, we do a great job and punch above our weight when it comes to drawing visitors. We want to build on that strength and add another 20% more visitors. So we put out an RFP, gosh, going on 2 years ago now. But as we're coming out of the pandemic, we as an organization realize we're transitioning out of the kind of triage mode that we've been in. And as an organization wanted to get a more kind of serious and rigorous structured plan about achieving that level of growth. We had a number of different proposals in front of us, including the River's Edge. And, we looked at upwards of 24 kind of investment priorities that we could consider. And we wanted some help at the Downtown Alliance, including our public sector partners, including our private sector partners. How do we prioritize these? How do we put together a plan that's going to be coherent and be able to endure and kind of organize ourselves over the next number of years? And so we put up this RFP, and I was really happy to get the response from JLP&D, the team we have with us today. They put together just their theory of change was really quite simple, and I think that's what drew us to it. It's that cities, downtowns are looking for major investment, major reinvestment, and their theory is that investment dollars are going to follow people. People are want to go to great spaces and great places, and those places need public nurturing and need to be cared for in order to survive and in order to thrive. And so we put together a great steering committee, again, made up of cross-sector leaders, including Met Council, the foundation community, our entertainment partners, the Chamber, Port Authority, the District Council, and your own short timer here, Commissioner Martinson, as a part of that team. So really, really good group, and including our Fortune 500 CEOs as co-chairs. And we're really happy to leap into the process. I'll just quickly, like in case anybody has to leave early, the top 3 priorities that really emerged were one, putting some tools together to accelerate the conversion of obsolete or unusable office space to convert it to housing to help us achieve those residential goals, while at the same time making a more healthy or balanced commercial office market, and at the same time simultaneously also creating that mix of users in the core that's so essential for the kind of vitality we want. The second piece is around public realm, and I'll just pause on this for a second, because had you told me at the beginning of the process that we really needed to focus on public realm, I would have probably bristled against that. When I think about public realm in downtown St. Paul, my mind comes to rest on places like Rice Park, where it couldn't be more beautiful or iconic, or Landmark Plaza or Mears Park. We have a number of those wonderful, beautiful spaces. But what this process and what this team helped me see is that while we do a great job of creating those beautiful vignettes, we haven't done a very good job over the decades at creating connections and connecting all those assets. And if we think about Fifth Street in particular, we have the XL Center and Ordway Center, Rice Park, Landmark Plaza, Landmark Center, Osborne Plaza, Central Station, Rice Park, Farmers Market, CHS Field. They all line up on Fifth Street. And yet the number of people and downtown users willing to walk even the distance from Rice Park to Mears Park is quite few. And so, and that's because of the streetscape and the kind of poor connection. So anyway, we'll keep going on. And then we identified 3 key redevelopment projects we need to see some early and strategic progress on. James, this is where I'll turn it over to you to sort of talk about a little bit about the process and findings.
Great. Thank you, Joe, and good morning, everyone. I agree with Joe. The process included a terrific and broadly representative steering committee, and we are grateful for Ramsey County's participation in that, and thank all the commissioners and staff who contributed so much to the process. It was a diverse set of stakeholders, and by intention, really focused less on tactics and specific projects and more on finding alignment around shared goals, shared principles, and outcomes. And just to reiterate, this was not a master plan for downtown. That would have been a much longer, more in-depth and more detailed process. But it was really to arrive at a logical kind of underpinning for a priority set of next investments that reflected that alignment of stakeholder interests. Next. The good news is that the problems that you're facing, the stresses that preceded even the pandemic, are solvable. And yet, you are at a critical moment, I would say, like many downtowns, potentially an existential threat to the continued relevance of your center city as the most vibrant, most culturally rich, most diverse, most active day-night place in your region. That's the role of center cities, and that's the promise of your place. You already have incredible cultural, economic, and social hubs. And the goal is to better connect them to one another so we can create a 1 + 1 = 3 or 4 moment. Next. Most people are well aware that despite downtown's relatively small footprint within a municipality, they have an enormously outsized contribution to tax base, to economic output. And so even if you are someone who literally doesn't really care about downtown as a place that's part of your daily life, you really should care very much, particularly if you're a taxpayer, about a vibrant, healthy, sustainable, and resilient downtown, because it creates so much of the pie that everyone shares in. And almost everybody wants a bigger pie if it can have a bigger pie. There are always unmet needs and everyone's chasing after the same scarce dollars. So how do we create an even healthier, more resilient economic engine? Again, that's both the identity and the brand and the signal of the unique qualities and character of what's distinctly St. Paul, but is very much the way that things can be sustained economically and financially.
And I'll just pause here to credit Josh and Carrie. This slide actually came directly out of their work.
I've seen this before.
Yeah.
It's also worth noting that we're talking about a set of investments that take political leadership, that take substantial resources, but that they will catalyze very significant, largely private investment. And so we're quite certain, based on our experience and what we see in St. Paul, that there will be a very positive return on public investment and a compelling argument for private investment and philanthropic investment as well. So just a quick snapshot. Since 2016, there's been a trending down in downtown jobs. Again, these were conditions that were warning signs before the global pandemic. You were seeing some uptick in downtown residential. There've been some quality projects that have emerged, and yet the velocity of that residential development is tepid and way underperforming relative to the goals that you've set. Next. Visitation to the area is good. It is definitely rebounding. We see hotspots for sure of entertainment and sports activity. It's still not back to pre-COVID, or it's at about pre-COVID levels. So definitely an opportunity to better connect more things to one another and capture and unlock a much greater opportunity. The big concern nationally, from every place to the major job centers to the secondary and tertiary markets, is a precipitous decline in the value of commercial office and other properties due to the changing patterns of work predominantly. And so we're seeing a concerning diminishing value of commercial property, which of course has a direct impact on the tax receipts that those properties generate and creates overall municipality concerns. So we need to be looking at ways to stimulate one-time investment in conversions and repurposing, but also opportunities to find new sustainable sources of economic output. And office to residential conversions is something that more and more downtowns are focusing on. Regarding process, we started by trying to build the strongest possible fact base for a relatively short duration processes possible. First, looking at market conditions. What are the economic conditions of downtown? And comparing them to other emerging downtowns, again, post-pandemic. And then existing conditions, the physical conditions. And this is where, as real estate and economic advisors, I'd say we're a little bit of a unicorn. We spend a lot of time thinking about the experience of place, because it turns out that business location decisions, tourism decisions, downtown residential sales and leasing decisions are made by individual and collections of human beings. And those people have never had more choices about quality of life places to live, work, play, visit, study. And so every downtown, which has seen the concerns around density and all the other stresses that center cities face, doubling down on the need to remain or once again become the quality of life place, the relevant center of urban life. And so we really need to be thinking about what that looks like. And part of this was to really understand your public spaces, not just your parks, but the connections between them and how we move around in downtown. So it's that 30 to 35% of all your downtown that happens to be owned by government, public streets and public parks. So that's a real opportunity to change the thing that you really can control. The next was stakeholder engagement, and our friends at NAO, who I think you are well familiar with, led that effort both in one-on-one group interviews and attending a number of community-based events, cultural entertainment events where large groups of people were present to try to capture sentiment. And then there was a survey that we got pretty solid feedback from. That was another touch point to inform the investment prioritization ideas. And then all that was synthesized into think about recommended prioritization. And the steering committee was asked to vote as well. And you'll see there was some scoring that allowed that to be one more set of inputs in an overall prioritization. Next. This is some of the detail from NAO's work and their engagement and outreach. Again, it was one-on-one and group stakeholders, community event engagement, and online surveying. Next. So it was about aligning those primary goals of increasing downtown residential population, increasing downtown employment, increasing visitation, with organizing principles about greater diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion, greater safety and perceptions of safety, and thinking about the readiness of certain projects and investment opportunities to move forward. You know, what was the urgency of some, how were they aligned, what had relative prohibitive costs versus relative low barrier to entry. And then what could some of the impact metrics be that might be considerations for the catalytic effect of certain investments, both in terms of impact on private market demand, access to capital, but also overall brand and image and public perception. Next. So again, just always a little bit hesitant to put any kind of quantitative scoring on anything, but we went through a process with the steering committee to actually rank and rate, and these were top tier projects as a way of prioritizing and evaluating the alignment of certain projects with the goals that we talked through at the front of the project. Next. So all to this idea that's emerging, particularly in work we're doing in downtowns all over the country, that accepting this notion that the central business district as a monolithic thing was never a particularly good idea. And that a place that really has a strong identity, not just in pockets, but throughout a downtown as the most cultural, social, civic, and engaging place to connect, to be in community, to find urban sophistication and vibrancy, entertainment, sports, arts and culture, food and beverage, and fun. So how do we create culture, creativity, and joy as new drivers of economic competitiveness at a time when attractive, largely residential ring neighborhoods are becoming, in some ways, competitive places to downtowns? How do we reverse that so that the walkability and the agglomeration of a whole bunch of interesting things is really the most compelling place? It doesn't have to capture everybody, but it brings back people who are really looking for these kinds of diverse and culturally rich environments, which you are very well positioned I would say, to expand and in some cases repair. So that gets us to 3 key strategies. Again, Joe said, do not give me 20 things to do. I would be actually happy if you just gave me one really great thing to do. So we gave 3. So again, what seems to us like low-hanging fruit, and yet I will say always, politically challenging, because it takes real money, but it also takes alignment of political interests. You have to also align private property interests with government interests. But we're seeing again and again that a meaningful gap financing in the equation of converting obsolete Class B and C office space to residential or other similar uses, could be hotel, could be other types of uses, is very attractive in the private market. And especially if it's in tandem with the other things we're going to talk about. And so we looked at as a marker, something on the order of 1.6 million square feet of potentially convertible space in the core, and at a rough benchmark of $50 per foot of incentive value that could be split as an allocation from state, county, and city, would have a value somewhere on the order of $80 million. And that could be, provided over a number of fiscal years, of course. Next.
James, I'm just going to pause on that and just, point out that 1.6 million square feet is about 10% of the downtown commercial office universe in downtown. So that's what we believe would also, at the time of this report, bring the commercial real estate market into balance. That number is probably higher today, just given the very fluid environment that we're in. I'll also point out that $50 a foot is pretty consistent with what you see nationally, talked about as the gap for these conversion projects. $50 to $60 is what's generally shared. And there's a kind of often referenced program out of Calgary that offered $75 a foot. Of course, that was Canadian dollars. So, but again, we're in the ballpark. The CUP credit, or the conversion tax credit that was introduced at the state this last year and will likely, did not succeed, but will likely, I think a number of us want to see another create a successful run at that in this next session. That would fill, again, it depends project by project, but on average about $35 a square foot. So it is a help, but doesn't get us all the way there. And we think we're going to have to find some also local tools to help fill this gap.
Yes, Commissioner Moran.
Okay, can you explain to me what the pre-war Class B and Class C buildings, what was that? What did that mean?
James, maybe you want to take that question. What is the
Pre-war Class B and C buildings?
Sure. So pre-war usually refers to pre-World War II, and they tend to be buildings that have a relatively small floor plate, the overall footprint of a building, compared to a building that might have been built in, say, the 1980s or 1990s, where tenants were looking for very large blocks of footprints and a much bigger rectangle shape. So sometimes a pre-war class B and C, class B, a class A is the best. And as you would imagine, B and C are gradations of lesser quality. And they tend to have smaller footprints, could be a little bit quirkier. And sometimes they're sort of a wedding cake where they start to tier up at the top and have setbacks and balconies. All a perfect idea for converting to residential. And imagine when you're in a hotel and there's a long corridor down the middle, and then you've got hotel rooms on either side. That's the way you sort of think about reconfiguring an office building into residential. Can I put a hallway down the middle? And how deep is the space on either side? And does that make even sense for an apartment? Sometimes buildings are so big that the space between the hallway to the outside window would be too deep. So it doesn't really work. But these older pre-World War II and lesser quality buildings that have old infrastructure, old elevators, funky windows, need a lot of replacement. They tend to be better fits and have made some really nice residential conversions.
Thank you,
Can
James.
you just give us an idea, Joe, of how many this is in St. Paul? Like, what's our ratio of B, C, A in St. Paul, so that we know what we're talking about?
Sure. So, I don't have specific breakdowns of what percentage of our total universe is A, B, and C. I'm sorry, I can get that for you.
It's in the report and I don't have it handy, sorry.
Yeah, but we'll definitely get it to you. I'll say, our class A, especially over the last couple of years, this flight to quality, our class A space has actually filled up quite well. So our better buildings are performing better. We have more B and C space than we probably know what to do with.
Okay.
And historically, there, generally speaking, when as I've connected with my colleagues who my peers around the country, one of the things I observed is that we all think our cities or our downtowns are super unique, and the reality is, like, we all have a lot more in common than we probably know. One thing that is truly unique about downtown St. Paul is, for whatever reason, the prototypical commercial building has floor plates that are 10 to 12,000 square feet. And so I think it's actually a competitive advantage we have in terms of conversion. And we've seen a lot of it. This isn't actually new in downtown St. Paul. If you think about, the Landmark Towers project that's underway, the Press House apartments, basically like half of the units in Lower Town are conversion projects. So I think we're in a competitive place for it. But when you talk about conversion, those projects have more risk and are often more expensive than if you were just building from scratch. And so that's why there's this kind of increased gap. I
can lead us to the next slide, I think, really
Okay.
well here as we talk about finance.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I just want to chime in. We have about 30 minutes left for timing.
Okay, great.
I actually have a hard stop at noon, so I apologize.
Oh, okay, great.
Mhm.
I'll try to move quickly through this. One thought was that we do a bunch of things in parallel that create a bunch of positive private market responses. And so it's streamlining permitting, at the same time offering this sort of attractive incentive program that can be structured in a number of ways as a grant program. And then we also, been working with Todd Hurley and others and talking about the potential of there being an acquisition fund. Should there be recalcitrant owners where there was an opportunity to acquire opportunistically a certain portfolio of property, that you might then have greater control about the future of that property, particularly if it's very strategically located. And obviously the Madison Equities portfolio, I said to Joe some time ago, I said, it's really remarkable that downtown is as healthy and as pleasant to be in as it is, because you have a few really difficult things working against you. You have that portfolio that's basically been sort of derelict. You have the social conditions around Central Station, which, I realize are challenging. And then you have the quirky skyways issue, which is taking people off the street. And yet it's still, there's so much good to work with that we think, combining some of these efforts, it will all seem very obvious 5 years from now when the media is writing about the new vibrancy of your core. So it's my hope for you.
Madam Chair,
Also-
Commissioners, I just want to add one piece here, without taking us sideways. Do want to stress, as we think about investments into blighted buildings, that's going to take a lot of potential intervention by public partners, city, county, state, private philanthropic efforts. This may be a strategy that the Ground Break Coalition takes on in terms of housing. They've been looking for that kind of multifamily solution there. But that also means that we may not be able to have the resources to do the deeply affordable, because we're also helping with the, the conversion. And we can continue to double down in terms of deeply affordable housing, mixed income housing, certainly as Commissioner Reinhardt has stressed. But we'll also need to say okay to market rate, and we need to have the courage to be able to say we welcome all housing. We need to ensure that there's kind of a wide swath of options available downtown.
Can I just add to that? I would say that's super important, especially as we grow our tax base. And in this case, by doing conversions, it's all new housing. So we're not pushing anyone out by being able to say yes to market rates. I just want to back it up. It's okay to say yes to market rate because it'll give us that base, and we're not pushing anybody out, because the affordable housing, especially in downtown, is actually plentiful in downtown, and that we need that throughout the rest of it.
26% of the housing units in downtown are income qualified affordable.
Yeah,
That doesn't even
that's a
count
lot.
the NOAA that exists here.
Right.
We're doing some interesting work in Atlanta now where it's not low income housing tax credit finance necessarily, but working with partners like JP Morgan Chase's Capital Solutions Group, which is focused on workforce housing, just going to 80%, and in some cases up to 100%, you're still addressing a segment of the market that often isn't being met by the private market, but still providing a kind of a workforce, relative affordable new unit with amenities and services. So there are some funders like JP Morgan Chase in the market, and some pension funds that are really interested in kind of stable, lower returns that maybe would be below market, but a little more than a typical LIHTC deal. So there are some options that are worth exploring. So public realm, and Joe talked a lot about this. One of the things we said was, look, there are a lot of things that need to get fixed, and that's true in every downtown. But let's accept the idea that we don't have to fix every street. Let's get your most important connector streets to be great streets. The ones that you just want to stroll on. Doesn't matter if it's day or night, winter, summer. You are always feeling compelled to keep walking, because the ballpark can be connected to the Xcel Energy Center, can be connected to the riverfront, can be connected to kind of a new upland park. And the new food hall downtown, is a thing that everybody wants to come see. So what are those streets, and what's along them? And how do we take the best work that you've been doing already, and you've got some great reconstructed streets, but also go to other places and see how they've used the public realm as an economic driver, and really learn from that, and have everybody say, yes, more like that. I loved those bike racks. I loved the way the cafe spaces were created with wider sidewalks on certain streets. And we gave up a moving lane on a street that really didn't need it. And now we have a cafe street in a really important connector kind of corridor. And so this was that framework. The dark purple was to say, try to get these streets to be really great streets, and also to organize the next wave of investments along them. Now, just as an example, because we were talking about the Madison Equities portfolio, if we dropped those buildings and reimagined them as historic tax credits, rehabilitation, and great ground floor restaurants and a food hall, or all these other kinds of activated ground floor uses, if we dropped those along Fifth Street and, these primary connector corridors, imagine what that would do to the market, and to think about the combination of repurposing buildings, a really beautiful, intentional, tended to, nurtured public realm, and then to continue to work, go to the next slide, on the bigger projects. So here we said, establish this framework, which I think there was sort of some general agreement about, that kind of a prioritize, pedestrian corridor. And then fund an ambitious next wave of capital improvements, of street improvements, that's building off of the great work that is already happening. And then resource the SPDA to just have an even greater placemaking capability and focus, with branding, wayfinding, lighting, programming, and enhanced maintenance. The thing that makes downtown management organizations the unsung heroes of cities, and recognizing that SPDA really is a very young organization, and absolutely needs more resources. The Skyway right-sizing, wasn't a core part of our investment strategy, but we certainly took a hard look at it and said, at the very least, try to right-size it. Find ways to consolidate the parts that are good, or that seem to be working, and see if you can prune it and right-size it, so that underutilized sections are not creating these strange, kind of antisocial impacts, and really kind of hurting both public realm and the private real estate. So that's a separate initiative that warrants a really thoughtful, in-depth process by, folks who do that sort of work. Next. So then we said, absolutely continue to do these longer time horizon, really kind of seductive, compelling, and very resistant projects, right? Like these are hard. These are big urban transformative projects that are hard to do and require a lot of alignment across sectors and departments and different parties, and prioritization of funding. So the city continued to do the work of a two-part solicitation of the private market for Central Station. That's terrific that continues to go forward. You'll be getting feedback from the private market about what they see as gap financing needed to make that happen, and then you make a collective judgment about, whether you want to go forward with something at this point or not. River's Edge, I really commend you for all the great work and the thoughtful approach to what that project can be. It's the most compelling site I've seen on the Mississippi River, and we've worked all over the Mississippi, and gotten things built along it. And I'm really excited for you for what it can be, to the extent that you can break it into parts so that you can get that built. That would be amazing. And I think even as a first phase, if there was a way to create a place on top of a parking structure and some of the infrastructure that would later support residential mixed-use development, that's great, and lots of precedents for that. Again, we recognize it's hard to do, but really just encourage everybody to just keep pushing it through the funnel. Keep it moving forward. And then, of course, the entertainment district has a fair amount of momentum, and there's lots of conversations with Minnesota Wild about getting funding support for a very sort of transformative change there. And we just caution about making sure that it doesn't remain this kind of siloed thing, but in fact can be much more integrated and connected to the larger core, so that folks who want to come to a sporting event, an entertainment event, come earlier, stay later, do other things, linger, stroll, get connected elsewhere, spend time and money doing other things in other parts of the downtown. And that idea of people walking in long loops through the downtown, where there are a series of rewards along the way that mean something to them, enough so that it makes you come back again and again and show off to your friends and family. Those are the important things to fill in those gaps. A few observations is just like, really double down on the fundamentals of clean, safe, and welcoming, and at a time when people have never had more choices, but also have these lingering sort of mythologies about the current state of urban centers. I think people just want to convince themselves that like we can't possibly go downtown. It can't be safe. So we got to really double down on that, and placemaking and activation and programming. There's so many great examples from all over the country, literally thousands of business improvement districts that are doing great things in public-private partnerships with counties, with cities, with private business owners, to great effect, with, volunteer corps and others. And then the thing that's kind of a signature of our work is focusing on the thing that makes you so unique and so special, that also makes you the kind of city that people want to be in around the country, a place that's urban and vibrant and has immediate access to incredible nature and natural assets. And so you are a river city, you are a city that has incredible culture and attractions, and you're very close to lots of wonderful recreational and outdoor events. And so just amplifying that and elevating that, and being more of a nature city, and have some of that DNA of your natural environment really be legible in and around downtown, in the landscape, in the retail, in the overall program and experience. And I apologize that I must drop off, but I hope that was helpful, and be happy to help in any way going forward to help you keep the momentum going.
Thank you, James.
Thank you, James.
Great, thank you.
I just pause on this slide as well to point out that the last couple of weeks in front of the St. Paul City Council, we've been discussing a new downtown improvement district that would include all of downtown. That vote, I think, will happen tomorrow, and then that kicks off a 45-day objection period. You may know that special service districts in Minnesota require essentially a supermajority of the affected property owners to be supportive, at least in a passive way. And so we need to survive that objection period with objections from people representing less than 35% of the district. And I believe we'll be coming to you all to talk specifically about that on the 13th. So I'll look forward to that conversation, but focusing on the fundamentals is obviously important. I know we're probably over time, and so we can...
I would say five more minutes. We're trying to, our hard stop was 12:15. Any questions or comments? Commissioner Moran, and then Commissioner Reinhardt, and then McGuire.
So I have a comment. I don't remember, I missed where James, what type of partner he is.
he was our consultant partner.
He's our consultant. Yeah. Okay, and so as Ramsey, St. Paul, and all the steering committees, as we come together to be strategic, and as we look at, how we're going to brand ourselves and identity and all the things that we talked about, I think it's important that we also don't create a plan that's a master plan. Because that's what I heard James, he used the phrase. And so I got a little stuck there, right? And so it's really important that, Ramsey County is moving away from that. And I hope our partners are also moving away from creating another plan. You can have a plan, but it doesn't have to be a master plan.
The concept is good.
Right.
Just not using
The word master,
Yeah.
because it's a triggering word that matters to many of us who are ancestors of those who have been enslaved, right? And so I know Ramsey County has made a commitment to use other language, and it will be helpful if, as we begin to move into the future, into the present, into the future, that we are using other words, other language.
Commissioner, I totally hear you. I just want to clarify that what I believe he was intending to say is that this is distinctly not a master plan. This is a downtown investment strategy. It looked at he was trying to draw a contrast to what this is.
I know, he just didn't know, right? I mean, he said what he said, and I'm just sharing.
It's that particular word.
So the guiding plan,
Not the
overarching
concept.
plan, but
Yes.
Yes. Hold on. Commissioner Commissioner Reinhardt.
Very quickly, since you have been doing so much research and things, what are your expectations of any opposition? What are you hearing? Maybe that's not a good question.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think, I don't think I've heard any real like opposition. What I've heard is a skepticism perhaps. That because, I mean, we are heading into a season with a number of sort of tough stories, especially about commercial real estate right now. I mean, we're seeing the Madison Equities portfolio for sale. We heard about the Chapter 7 at one of their properties. You know, there are a number of buildings in distress right now, and I think, you know, that will create a certain amount of anxiety and fear. And I think we can take that collectively as a sign that that the downtown is in decline. And feel very down about that. Or we can see it as a moment of transition and disruption that becomes an opportunity. And I am imploring all of us, public sector, private sector, all levels, to really see this as an opportunity, but not one that will seize itself. An opportunity that can only be seized if we all take some pretty bold and aggressive action. I really believe if we make the investments that are sort of laid out here, without a doubt, downtown's best days are ahead of us. But if we do nothing, if we just kind of let things play out, you know, then I do think there's deep cause for concern. So I'm optimistic. The pushback I get are from people who don't share that optimism, but I'm really convinced that it's an opportunity if we act.
That makes me feel better.
Commissioner McGuire.
Yeah, thanks. Joe, thank you so much. This is really exciting to think about doing all these things. And we just came back from Tampa, you know, they've transformed their region by using their waterfront and their city. I mean, they have a great streetcar, you know, that we drove around and saw all their different places, using the river, using their inner city, you know, I mean, I think they've just transformed the whole city and region with their development that they've put in. And I'm just, if you want to comment on how you're thinking about our use of the river too, like we do want downtown. I mean, downtown, you know, is next, is adjoins the river. But, you know, we've got our big, you know, our big effort to, you know, at least get to the river. So, and just talk a little bit about how we're all working on that together.
I guess I would observe that being beautiful is not enough. If it were, Kellogg Mall Park would be the most vibrant park in all of the county. Because it is truly beautiful. It's well designed, it's actually pretty well maintained. It's perched at this amazing point where you can see upstream and downstream at the bend, on top of the bluff. I mean, it's amazing, but it's not enough to be beautiful. What makes a place feel great is people, packing it with people. And so I'd say that's number one, is really think about how do we, if we want those spaces to feel vibrant, we just have to find ways to put more people closer to the river's edge. The second piece is, I think, and again, we've been slow to recognize this, and this is a reflection on both the city and the county, but if we think about the way that Kellogg Boulevard is built, with just a tremendous traffic capacity, I think about the crossing from 317 Washington to the Science Museum. You're crossing 6 lanes of traffic. It's hostile to the pedestrian. We have to prioritize pedestrians in order to create spaces where people want to be, because whether you got here by bike, transit, or car, or you walked here, all 4 of those folks are pedestrians at some point in their experience. And then it also applies to Shepherd Road. Shepherd Road was built and designed essentially as a freeway that separates us from the river. So, you know, and then we're kind of like, we've been talking about it for as long as I've worked in downtown, so over 30 years. And until we address those as barriers, I think we're going to keep talking about it. But the good news is it's within our control to shrink those up, put some road diets in place and really prioritize the pedestrians, in addition to the economic development that's gonna create more destinations.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, if we could just circle back to slide 17, which is the priority list. I feel like this is so critical to the conversation as well. The listing of important projects here. So the text is small, but you'll see public realm improvements. That's exactly what Joe's talking about. And so the St. Paul Downtown Alliance isn't going to wait for these big swings. They're going to improve the user experience now, so that we can make these major investments. You'll see Central Station, there's River's Edge near the top. You'll also notice, the East Building is on there. Commissioner Ortega's done a lot of great work on the Riverview streetcar. These major transformative investments cannot occur until we create a good user experience now, which makes individuals want to invest here and live here as well. So the interdependency piece between downtown and our suburban community is critical to this conversation. So Commissioner McGuire, when you're out and about Roseville and other areas, like this needs to be, you know, something they're talking about as well. You know, Commissioner Fretham, as you extend on to greater areas, as you're out in the community, but we need to make sure that we're talking about the downtown experience, because we're not going to be able to serve our residents holistically for every levy supported program that Ramsey County has. We're going to start to see major hits to that unless we do something to intervene both in the short term and in the long term as well.
Commissioner Freda.
Well, thank you for this. I will say I got to go to the Yacht Club Festival this weekend and so vibrant, so many people in downtown, and my partner was even commenting like, I cannot remember the last time I've seen this many people in downtown St. Paul. So I hope, I appreciate that this plan is targeted. And we're being really thoughtful. It's not just throw money everywhere. The placemaking components I think are really important. I know I had shared something with a couple of commissioners earlier about some work that there was in another state on a business improvement district that really focused on artwork to create a place that people wanted to be. And I think particularly on Fifth Street, making along with research that when you've got public art in places, people feel safer, the perceptions of safety are better. And I think that's something I hear in my community. Oh, you go to downtown. I was like, it's fine. It's totally fine, but there are perceptions and art can improve that in a really meaningful, quick win type of way. I also think the wayfinding, even walking across the bridge from the yacht club, someone from Minneapolis was complaining about, oh, I can't find anything, which is ridiculous because I'm consistently lost in downtown Minneapolis and I worked there for several years. But people have this perception that it's hard to find. So the wayfinding piece, I think, is super important. When it comes to the natural elements, I'm wondering, has there been any work done with our watershed district in this area? I love over on University by Blackheart, they've got like native gardens. That's so cool. Getting that downtown would be great. And that might be just another partner to bring in, or our extension gardeners. Just on that for now. Might be another way to bring in volunteers to help with that. And then the other thing I want to add is, one thing I don't see on this list is anywhere is Union Depot. And recently in the last year, I visited Denver and St. Louis, and both of those downtowns have beautiful renovated train stations. Oh, and actually LA does too, like that. And they become sort of a community hub and opportunity. And I think there's a lot of opportunity there that we could continue to lean into to be a part of that. And one of the missing factors, especially in a place like Minnesota where it's cold, so we've got these beautiful parks, but people don't always want to go in there, is that third place. Where can you go that you don't have to pay to be? And how do we identify those ones that already exist and make them more accessible and promote them to folks? I'm excited to see what you do. This is important, and I will definitely message to my community.
Right, yeah. I will just mention about around the like office to residential conversions, and would just be curious at the dollar amount and the value that you're putting the buildings at, because how I'm thinking about the acquisition is that, you know, if it remains the same, the status quo, like how the buildings currently are, maybe it's just value too high. and that the market should just readjust itself to say like, it has deferred maintenance, it has this amount of work that needs to go in. So I feel like that's my greatest tension is when we start creating acquisition funds that the public puts dollars into. And also hearing from other cities about how even when there are buildings that are in, the units are just so expensive that they aren't even filled. So I just want to be like cautious, and I really appreciate the strategy overall and the areas where we have identified. But I just want us to make sure that we are holding those realities together too.
You need to get a copy of her workshop materials for the film and arts. Seriously, it will help you in selling some of the things that downtown I do.
Jill, thank you so much for coming
Thank
here,
you.
Commissioner
Thanks,
Martinson.
Jill.
Thank you for supporting as well as our CED team for being awesome and supporting this. Joe, I know that this has, it's been a long ways coming, and I think with this strategy, we're going to change downtown. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, we're walking to Landmark for lunch, and then we're back here at 2 o'clock to do our county manager hiring update, which is really important and awesome.
I'll be hurting you all.
Yes. Joanna will not
So
let
what
us
time should we meet out there? 5 minutes?
Or you can just walk, you don't get around.
We can get them through.
So, okay,
I'll be all
let's just
over.
see where,
Maybe we're not.
I'm gonna go jump myself on the other side, so. All the lights are here.
Yeah.